right, I'm back again. Well, I say again because I had the pleasure of interviewing with this guy a couple weeks ago, and now I have the pleasure of having him on our show. I think you guys are gonna get a lot out of this interview because this is a man who has built a substantial portfolio of syndicated apartment deals through the course of his career. And I had so much fun interviewing with him. I had to bring him on our show so that my audience could get the full advantage of listening to what he's built, what he's been through, and where he's heading next. And so, welcome to the show, Olas Dantis. Thanks for coming on today, man, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Joe. Really appreciate having me on the show. You're a legend. I just thank you for having me. Can't wait to dig in with you today.
Absolutely, man. So tell our listeners, where just give us the background of 30 seconds of where you started, how you even thought about getting into apartments, and then kind of how you got to where you're at today.
I'm gonna have to 4x this to go in 30 seconds, but basically
you can do it a minute and 30 seconds. How's that? Maybe give it 2 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Take your time.
That's more than,
tell your story. Yeah.
So basically, as some of you maybe could tell or not, I'm actually not from the United States. I'm from the United Kingdom, from London. I grew up in London. So I moved to the US about 7 years ago. And I love to tell the story, right? Because I remember my wife, she invited me over. She was working in Disney, Orlando, and I'm a window seat guy. So I was, the window seat looking down, kind of like suburbia America. And I was just thinking to myself, this place is gorgeous, right? That I remember that vividly, like America is just beautiful. So I had that kind of notion of, just goats on the street, right? That's the America that I knew. Anyway, we moved here a few years later after my wife finished her internship at Disney. And, slowly but surely kind of got assimilated into the American life. Nice job, good apartment. Life was good, living the American dream. Go to work, come home, do it again. Go to work, traffic, come home, do it again. And I was like, there's gotta be. I mean, I love this, but come on, give me something, right? So I was kind of thinking about that. Not too far from kind of when I was kind of struggling with that thought, a friend of mine called me from the UK to fly over to Dubai to meet him. The reason I tell this story is success is never gonna come to you in a golden box with a red ribbon around it. Right. So that was my call. The reason I'm talking to you, Joe, today was that call. That's why I'm telling the story, right? People think I want to be successful, but there's this grandiose event. No, it could be like a phone call. Anyway, my friend called me, said, hey, meet me in Dubai. I'm in with some investors there and I need you to help me with my business. I was like, okay. So I did what every wise man does, right? I prayed about it. And then I asked my wife. And of course, my wife was like, well, why? Why are you flying, all the way to meet your friend? I mean, have you heard of Zoom or Skype? This was way back before COVID-19 or whatever. This was way back. Anyway, long story short, I was on the plane with my friend, to Dubai, to meet my friend in Dubai. I learned so much in that hotel room, right? And I just, on my way back on the plane, I was like, I learned my friend's business, which ironically was real estate, right? Real estate in the UK though. And I was coming back on the plane thinking, I need to do this in America. I need to do this. Whatever this thing is, this real estate thing, my friend is doing clearly phenomenally well. I want to do it in America. I knew nothing about real estate, right? This was 6-7 years ago for context. Got back to the United States, went to my best friend, Google, and just started Googling real estate. Then I got into a website called Bigger Pockets. And then I got to their podcast. Pay attention, anyone listening to this. I got to their podcast, and every guest on that show, I kind of listened all the way from the bottom. I started listening from the bottom all the way to the top. And every guest said, this book changed their life, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I picked up that book and I read that book. And the only way I could describe it, Joe, was my brain got a uppercut. Remember, I was talking about go to work, come home, do it again. That was exactly or similar to what Rich Dad, Poor Dad was kind of talking about in the beginning. And I felt like there was much more to do in America and in life than just being in the rat race, right? 3 months after, I bought my first duplex in a Class A area, Baltimore, Maryland. Moved from the luxury, fancy apartment that my wife and I were paying. We thought we were living the life, not knowing I was paying someone cash flow, different conversation. And then we left that luxury apartment, bought our own building, which was a duplex. And then I started getting cash flow. But then I had to worry about trash and taxes and all the adulting that came with buying a property, but that's kind of how my journey started. And I always like to tell the story because, when Joe and I start talking about $11 million deals and, bigger deals, I don't want to lose that day one. Every day is like day one for me. In my business, dwelling, you can see every day is like the very first day. You got to grind. You got to act like it's your day one. So I think that's the story. And I really want to just kind of stop you, and then Joe, you can kind of dig it if you want.
Dude, so I love that story. I never heard that. I never heard that story. You didn't tell me that story the first time we spoke. So I love this. I love the story. So there's a massive takeaways here. But before we even get to the takeaway, I got to tell you the craziest part of that story is that you convinced your wife to leave Florida to move to Baltimore, of all places in the world. Are you kidding me? How did you even how did that conversation go? Like, we're going to leave sunny Florida to go to Baltimore? Had she ever been to Baltimore before that?
Of course not. And I've
like, Baltimore is like, no offense to people from Baltimore, but it's just a terrible, terrible place. Like, I lived 3 hours. I used to drive through Baltimore all the time, going from Jersey to Washington, D.C. And just, man, I mean, there's great crabs in Baltimore, but that's about it. I mean, the harbor's nice. I don't know, whatever. Just nothing about Baltimore makes me want to live there, man.
By the way. I've also convinced my wife to move from Baltimore to Texas. So I've done this twice. So just so you know.
That's a whole lot better than going to Baltimore. I mean, I can't imagine there's anywhere worse than Baltimore and Texas. Anyway, so I'm gonna have a lot of listeners in Baltimore thinking I'm a terrible person after that, but it doesn't matter. So, I digress for a second. So the couple big takeaways from that: law of manifestation, right? You manifested this thing. Right. You were intently focused and manifested this thing. Then it was the consistency, because you were consistent about the practice and you immersed yourself in it. Right. You read the books, you studied the content, and you went after it. Right. Then you took action. Right. I can't tell you it sickens me sometimes. I coach people, or I have these discovery calls, and I get on the call and I ask people, like, what's holding you back? And they're like, man, I was on the phone a couple of months ago. I've said this a few times on a couple of different podcasts. This woman's going to have a major, self-realization if she listens to the podcast. She's like, I have a master's degree in real estate. I go, okay. And she goes, I spent $60,000 with a Fortune Builders coach. I go, okay, great. How much real estate do you own? She says, none. I'm like, how could you have that much knowledge about a subject and never once buy a piece of real estate? Like, it boggles my mind how deep people go down a rabbit hole and they're paralyzed to take action. Right. And we just can't get anywhere that way. So I commend you on driving and finding that drive and committing towards it, but also taking action, right? Whether it's a duplex in Baltimore or, you just find your first investment property somehow, some way, getting started and greasing those skids to move forward. I think that's one of the most impactful things people can do. But I also love the one thing that you said, and I want to point out, is that it's not always obvious when the signs are put in front of us, right? And so many of us have these opportunities placed right in front of us, and then we overanalyze, or we convince ourselves, or we tell ourselves these rational lies about why it's not the right time, or it's not the right opportunity, or it's not the right thing, or why would this be right for me, or I'm not good enough, or fast enough, or strong enough, or educated enough, or I don't have the background, or it's too risky.
Just show up.
Like, just be there. Reach out and grab it. Right? It's not going to smack you in the face. Like, so many people think success is just dropped on our lap. Like, guys, we're out there every day chasing it, trying to sometimes create problems in order to solve them so we can make the success happen. And then, unfortunately, a lot of times people are literally given these, potential opportunities, and they don't even realize they're opportunities because they talk themselves out of it. So I love that you took advantage of the opportunity to take that trip and to learn that knowledge and to take advantage of it and go down that rabbit hole. So let's fast forward to, you relocated twice, you bought some real estate. How did it expand, man? Because you had to have some hiccups along the road, right? You had to have some failures. You had to have some shit had to go sideways along the way, right? So let's talk about some of that, right?
All right. So I mean, this is kind of where the story continues, and I I just want to emphasize that because I think, and you maybe mentioned this as well before we started recording, most people that listen to this podcast are people that want to do real estate and want to get into the game, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not Grant Cardone, right? Or somebody that's really done well. So for you, if you're out there and you're thinking, how do I get started? Just start small, right? You've heard this before, but it literally just starts small, which I did, right? I bought this duplex. We moved into the bottom floor. We had 2 tenants in the top floor paying us rent, right? So my wife made that shift. We bought this property, and my wife and I had this epiphany, right? Just at home one night, one evening, doing what lovers do, right? Cooking, and we just got talking. And I was telling my wife, I was like, hey, my account, my Bank of America account, it just keeps growing now that we moved to this new building, and I'm not paying any rent, or any more, and any rent like I was before, right? And she said the same thing, like, yo, me too. I noticed the same thing with my account, right? It's like a beautiful thing, right? Such, maybe like you could call it a small change, but it's just really significant, right? In your pocketbook. Anyway, we did this and we're like, this is really fantastic. Any normal person would just go do the same thing again, right? Buy another duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. Of course, I didn't do that. I met a partner, and the partner said, hey, Ola, let's go flip some houses down the street. We're going to make $50,000 and do no work, right? Not true, obviously. I was watching too much HGTV at the time. So I went to flip. And don't get me wrong, I want to bold and underline this. I'm not saying flipping is bad, but flipping is not for everyone, right? Just like how, I don't know, tennis is not for everyone. So I went into flipping houses, and I realized, because I'm a perfectionist, I was going to my projects every day, driving the contractors crazy, telling them the paint wasn't the right color and the corner is in, so basically my project took longer. I had cost overruns. I was coming home, full of dust. And my wife is like, what are you doing? Are you managing this project, or you're working in this project?
Yeah.
So, I did a few projects. I realized flipping wasn't for me, but I already enrolled, with a coach, right? To learn apartment syndication, but I took a break to go flip. And this is important because while I was flipping houses, getting covered in dust and, dealing with trash and all that kind of stuff, my cohort, my mates that joined the same apartment syndication group were buying 100-unit apartment buildings. We're doing pretty well. But the 2 years that I left cost me, and I did not make the $50,000 and $100,000 I thought I was going to make in 2 months. No, there's the price to pay in life. There's a price to pay, and there are no discounts. You're always going to pay the full price. And I did, right, because I left my syndication coaching to go flip houses. Anyway, when I got back, I saw that, a lot of my friends were already buying apartments. So I just quickly plugged in and partnered. So if you were not paying attention, 2 things I did to go from my duplex to larger deals was a mentor and partners. I just closed a 10 million, plus deal, literally last week, actually. I was just telling Joe. And just to give, for those that are, have a quantitative mind, there were literally almost 40 people that were involved in that deal. Not investors, people. Like the lenders council, right? Like the title guy, like the rate cap people. We had to buy a rate cap because we had a floating rate. I don't want to throw too many jargons out there. Like there were literally 40 people. If we counted the emails, it's probably like, I don't know, maybe more than 1,000 emails or more.
Coordinating that thing.
You just have to understand that. Like, this is not, flipping the house down the road. I just want to really stress that. So the reason I said mentor and partnership is to get used to the fact that you cannot do this alone. So if you want to buy an apartment building in America today, it's a team sport, period.
Yeah.
So you need to get to that frame of mind, because that's how you build wealth and that's why you get successful. Like, I watched my team masterfully close this deal. Like, it was just beautiful to watch. Everybody stayed in the lanes and things got done. And it was just masterful. So I think for those that are out there, get a mentor, appreciate partners. I have, there are many partners I do deals of business with. And that's how you kind of make that, that jump. And just kind of humble yourself, right? This is not a contest. Like, you know, I'm better. I know, like, there are things you don't know and there are things you know. And those that are very good at a certain lane, like, for instance, I have a partner of mine, is an engineer by trade, you know, and he just loves contracts. He loves reading contracts, like the 5.1.2 clause, but I don't care about that. So,
Yeah.
you know, so if you're out there listening, just understand that you're not going to be good at everything. So just find what you think you're good at, double down on that, and find partners to kind of, you know, just complement what you're good at.
I love that, because I think a lot of people are trying to become experts in what they don't know, and the true experts are finding people that are experts at what they don't know, right? Like creating opportunity where you're weak, right? And relying on someone else who's strong in that field, creating partnerships that are strong in that field. And I find a lot of partnerships goes sour because they don't have varying interests. Like, in other words, you have partners that don't do things differently. They're the same type of person. They do the same type of thing over and over again. So the best partnerships are strong at different things, right? Like one of my partnerships in the storage business. My partner is the construction guy, and he's a great operator, and he's a day-to-day guy, and he's dealing with the schedules and the budgets and the operations and keeping the guys on track. I'm not that guy. I'm the visionary, right? I'm thinking big picture. I'm thinking 12 months from now. I'm thinking about recruiting and the people inside, and how do I create comp plans and opportunities for them. That's not stuff that he wants to mess with, right? So like we have to have our expertise inside of a partnership, and we have to stay in our lane inside of a partnership. And some of the times, just like we have great partnerships, the ones that are breaking up or having like conflict are the ones that are trying to do the same thing, right? So I think that, you know, like what you're saying is, you know, find great partners. But one of the things when you're finding great partners too, guys, is make sure that you're finding people that complement your skill set and are hopefully opposite of your skill set. I see a lot of people get into partnerships just because they're friends. It doesn't create a great partnership opportunity. Just because you're buddies with somebody, you're drinking buddies, or you went to high school or college together, doesn't mean you're going to make great business associates.
Yeah,
There's nothing. That means nothing. Yeah, right. You might get into a partnership with your spouse, your wife, or your husband. Doesn't mean you're going to work well together if you don't have. But sometimes it works really well because opposites attract. And sometimes your spouse is the perfect business partner because he or she does exactly what you don't do really well, right? So you see it work really well sometimes, because sometimes couples make great partners because in life they make great partners. Sometimes they butt heads because they're very similar and they don't add anything to the dynamic of the relationship and business. So, you know, I know it's kind of a tangent, but just to add to what you're saying, I think it's really, really important that people think about that. This is it's like a marriage, man. And when you start to build 6, 7, 8-figure businesses, it's just as bad as a divorce when shit falls apart.
Yes, that's 100% true.
So you're building this portfolio, the syndication portfolio. You have a bunch of partners. And by the way, the one thing I wanted to add to that is, you know, you're going from small to large. I think a lot of people's concept is I'm giving up control, right? And maybe you can speak to this, Ola. I'm giving up control. I have 100% ownership of the single family fix and flip. I'm going to make 50 grand, man. You want me to go buy a $5 million apartment building and I'm going to give up equity to everybody. And one of my friends has this saying, I love it. It's like, do you want 100% of the grape or 20% of the watermelon? Right. And like, maybe you can walk people through the mentality of what it's like to, you know, kind of, you know, quote unquote, give up that control to find those great people to work with because of the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I probably want to say control might be an illusion, perhaps a mirage.
Yeah.
You know, like to even let's even start there. But I think I want to actually go back a little bit. You have to really, really know thyself, right? There are some people in this world that just don't care to have $1 million asset. Like they're just not wired that way for whatever reason, how they grew up, whatever. So you need to know for yourself. The goal for my business, I don't like sharing this publicly, is to get to 10,000 units before I pass on to the next life. So I'm kind of averaging 300 units of transactions every year. So it would take me 33.33 years to get there. So I'll be in my 60s. That's long term. And I'm also thinking, you know, after I'm gone, whoever takes over should continue, right? So that's kind of on the goal side. But then, of course, we also have on the philanthropic side, we want to give a house, one house to a family every year. So what I'm trying to say is you have to know what you're aiming for. If you're aiming to have 50, single family homes or whatever, or you just want to have 5 single family homes that gives you $5,000 cash flow, whatever it is, just really understand that first. Because if you don't, then you're going to have that, like kind of what you said, butt heads with yourself, because you actually didn't specify what you were going after in the first place. Now, if you were just doing a business like single family flips by accident, and you haven't just taken a step back and say, hey, why the heck am I actually doing this? Then that's a different case. You're just doing it by accident. So for you have kind of two types of people. They're just doing it by accident because that's, their body was flipping, so they started flipping. Or you've maybe chosen that field and you don't really want to go anywhere else. So maybe now there's a third one, is you've actually said, I want to be a flipper of single family homes in the state of Arizona. You've actually made that pledge, and that's fine, but just understand that that's what you want to do, and you just focus on that. And of course, you can always pivot. So, for me, I think control is definitely a mirage. At the end of the day, I define wealth as the time when you've discovered that you don't have to swap your time for money. That's when you become wealthy, right? Think about a dentist, right? Or a doctor or an engineer or software developer. They have to literally trade 8 hours or 10 hours of their day to do things, right? And then they get paid. But think about an investor, a typical investor, like a landlord or like an owner of a storage facility like you. You don't have to be in front of the storage place taking money. You don't. Like you're someplace else in the world, right? And someone's paying you to store their stuff, or someone is paying you for rent. Like I've got properties in Baltimore. I was there, a few months ago, but I don't have to be in front of my property collecting money every day. I don't have to. I think that's wealth, and I think if you can figure that out, you're wealthy. So whatever way you are in the spectrum of, you want to be a single family guy and you've paid them off and you get like 20K, a month, that's great. Or you want to be a Grant Cardone and you have an helicopter and that's what makes you happy. Like it's just totally up to you. Now I'm going to mention this, finally, in life, there's always a price to pay and there are no discounts. You're always going to pay that full price. Meaning, if you want to be the single family guy with, the mortgage is paid off, you get 20K every month, there's a price for that. If you want to be, the guy with the private jet, there's a price to pay for that. It's just up to you. Or you want to be the guy in the middle, just low key, nobody knows who you are. You're making your $1 million every month. You could be on the streets, nobody knows you. That's fine too. But there's always a price to pay and there are no discounts. Be aware of that price.
We're opening up to a whole different philosophical conversation here for a second, right? So let's talk about that. What do you think the difference in the price is to pay if it's somebody that has a private jet or somebody who's doing, multi-millions of dollars in apartment buildings?
I was talking to my wife recently about this. I have a fear of success, right? I have like 4 people in my life that I can go to and they just tell me the truth. Like they don't care about like my net worth. They don't care, So when we get to a level in life, and it's really hard to describe, right? No, it
is. That's why I asked you a question, and I'll give you my answer. I'm not going to hold back.
Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah. Basically, you have to know, and I'll give us just a quick story, and then I'll jump back. There was a book I just read, and it was called actually, Why Should All the White Guys Have All the Fun? Something like that. It was written by the first, I know, funny title, but it was written by the first Black billionaire in America, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know him because he passed away, Reginald Lewis. He passed away in 1995, but he did the biggest LBO, which was a leverage buyout in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Right, this dude had a private jet like back then. Mm-hmm. He died at the age of 50, brain cancer, because he was just apparently was just so busy. He was flying. He was going all over the place. Right, he was just a really busy guy. He went to Harvard. right? But it's not with us. It died at the age of 50. So if you want to say, I've got two young girls right now. So if I want to say to myself, I want to be a billionaire, what does it take quantitatively to get to $1 billion worth of asset? It takes X amount of units. Okay, I want to get that X. If it's 40,000 units, I want to get 40,000, whatever. But that means I'm not going to be with my kids every night. I'm not going to be able to pick them up from school. Now, if my girl ends up being a stripper or, God forbid, a drug addict, that could be a hefty price. Now, if somebody came and said, "Hey, don't be the billionaire. Your kid would end up at the pub as a stripper." I know these are extremes, right? On drugs, but she'll be a good daddy-loving girl, but you also be a centimillionaire, like I have 100 million. I mean, I would choose the 100 million all day long. I have no interest in the magnitude of money. I just want to have a well-fulfilled life, right? Now, I'm not saying if you're a billionaire, your kid is going to be a stripper. Obviously, I'm not saying that. There's no correlation. But on the quest to wealth, there's a price to pay, right? And I'm going to end with this for those listening, like, what's this dude talking about? I want to cry in my Bentley than in my bug, right? Let me tell you something. Jeff Bezos, his wife divorced him. Bill Gates, I almost cried when I saw that on the news. So my point is, it doesn't mean that you're a billionaire necessarily mean that you're still going to have a happy life or you're going to have your wife with you. It like literally doesn't mean that. So on your way to that wealth, just know that there's a price to pay. Be aware of it. And the only way to be centered as you're going through that journey is to be aware of the same thing we're talking about. What is the cost of my pursuit to my family, to my friends, to my mental state, to my well-being, right? That's why I meditate every day. Like, you have to have that self-awareness. So you're not just out there just in this random pursuit without reflection.
All right. I'm going to flip the argument. You ready? I'm going to flip the argument on you. I actually believe that the more wealthy I get is because of, I have a book coming on this in 2 weeks. No shit. So I love this discussion we're having. So I actually believe that wealth is created through great leaders, through creating great leaders. We have this saying inside of my organization that great leaders create great leaders, right? So the book is called Multiplicity, and the concept is multiplying great leadership, right? And so I actually believe that you can live and have all of those things. You can have all of the lifestyle that you want. You can have amazing kids. Your kids don't have to be strippers. I too have two young girls, and I firmly don't believe either one of them are going to be strippers. My younger one is crazy. So no matter what happens, who knows? But that being said, I believe that the more great leaders you create, and the more opportunity that you create for them to create for other people, and the more great leaders they create, the more money we're all going to make together, right? And the more money ultimately I'm going to make because I'm at the top of the pyramid, right? They're all going to make money underneath of me, and they're all going to make a lot of money. In fact, my goal is to see how many seven-figure earners I can make, right, before I die. And so that byproduct by proxy is going to potentially make me a billionaire one day. I don't know. We'll see. That's the goal. We'll see how many I can create on top of all the real estate that we're creating, on top of all the other opportunities and businesses we're buying, and all that type of thing, right? Quality of life will continue to improve as all of this stuff improves. And my time is actually more free because I'm creating leaders underneath of me. I'm not creating problem makers, I'm creating problem solvers. And so the more opportunity I make for them to go out and create for themselves and create opportunity for themselves, the more it actually increases my lifestyle, the more it actually increases my time freedom, the more it actually increases my ability to go create more for myself. And so the higher that I go, it's seemingly, again, this has only been a few years because it took me 15 years to get to this point to create these opportunities for people and have the cash leverage and some of the wealth and some of the real estate and the credibility and the credit and all that kind of stuff that took years to build up. So when people are listening to this and they're thinking like, wow, you sound like a pompous asshole. Guys, I've been doing this for 20 years in business, basically 15 in real estate, right? That when I see this leverage and this opportunity and we push it down to those below us and allow them to go and expand it, right? That multiplicity effect, right? I believe makes lifestyle better, makes, so we say there's a price. I don't look at it as a price. I look at it as an investment. It's a constant reinvestment into my people. It's a constant reinvestment into my culture. It's a constant reinvestment into my team. and those people reinvesting into their people. And that's actually the concept, believe it or not, to bring it full circle of this podcast. It's the legacy blueprint, right? How do we build a legacy so that 200 years from now, 4 generations, your great grandkids are like doing something that they learned from some dude that, you know, works for me, that they don't even know that, like, you're, you know, somebody was listening to this podcast, was like, hey, I want to put this into action. Right. And then like, they don't know, right? They don't even know who we are. They don't remember us. Like, right. Unless you got a statue in your name or some library with your name on it. Right. Right. And that's the coolest thing, I think, is the creationary ability for us to grow those leaders and help them succeed, so that we can all become better. So that's it in a nutshell.
And yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, being a billionaire or you know, even more, there's nothing wrong with it. So I definitely, I believe in the multiplicity effect, as well, 100%.
Not to mention the charity piece of it. I love what you're talking about with building a house a year, giving a house away. I love what you're talking about with creating those 10,000 units. By the way, the thing that I think's missing in your math, which we could talk about offline, is that you're doing 300 units a year. You're forgetting about the scalability and the proportions of things. Whatever the hell you're doing right now, dude, 10 years from now, 300 units is going to be a month. You're going to be like, you're going to look at a 300 unit apartment complex. Yeah. I mean, number. Oh, so conservative. You're gonna hit, like, what did you say, 62 or whatever? You're gonna be like 45, going, okay, I got 10,000 units. Now what do I do? Right. So anyway, that was a lot of fun, man. What did I miss? What did I forget to ask you? What did we not talk about?
Yeah, no, I think we covered pretty much a bunch. I just really want someone out there to be inspired. You know, I just want to make sure that, like you said, if, you know, my great grandkids listen to this, they're going to, you know, pick one thing that can help them and propel them to the next level.
Listen, man, I think anybody who immigrates here at the age of 7, builds a multi-million-dollar investment portfolio out of scratch, listens to a bunch of podcasts and puts it to work. You're just like living proof that us being on here is not a waste of hot air, and that there's somebody out there that's going to listen to this, go listen to some more podcasts, read some books, put the stuff into action. You know, this shit works. And that's why I do it. That's why we do it. And by the way, for our listeners, is 100% free. There's no advertising on here. All we ask you to do is leave a 5-star review, go on iTunes, share it with your friends, put it on your Facebook wall, you know, send it in a messenger, send it in a text message, tag us on there. Let us know that you're sharing it. And we appreciate you guys continuing to listen. And if it's your first time listening, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So appreciate you being on here. Ola, thanks again, man. Second interview, second time talking to you. Always a pleasure. I'm sure we'll have you back here in the future.
Thanks so much, Joe. Appreciate it.